My girlfriend and I are going to read some stories and play Minecraft today. If you want to send in your own stories, you can find the email in the description. I was buried alive, and everyone I loved thought I was already dead. That sounds pretty crazy at first, but let me explain. 3 days before my funeral, I was just a normal woman with a boring routine and a messy bun that never stayed in place. My name's Elena. I'm 28, and if you had asked me back then what my biggest fear was, I would have said spiders, or maybe public speaking. Not being buried alive. Never that. It started on a rainy Tuesday night. I remember because I was late leaving work, and the streets were already slick from hours of heavy rain. The kind of rain that makes everything feel slow and quiet, like the whole world is underwater. I worked at a small veterinary clinic, nothing glamorous. Just long shifts, barking dogs, and coffee that tasted like burnt sadness. That night, I stayed late to help with an emergency surgery on a golden retriever that had swallowed half a tennis ball. By the time I locked the clinic doors, it was almost 10:30 p.m. My phone buzzed. "Mom, drive safe. Roads are terrible tonight." I texted back, "I will. Love you." Funny how normal that message felt, like every other message we'd ever sent. If I had known what was about to happen, I would have called her instead. The rain was brutal on the drive home. Water hammered against the windshield so hard it sounded like gravel. My wipers were working overtime, barely keeping up. Streetlights blurred into long golden streaks across the glass. I remember turning onto the highway. That's the last moment everything still felt safe. Then it happened. A truck, huge, out of nowhere. It hydroplaned across the divider like some slow-motion nightmare. 1 second, it was in its lane. The next, it was spinning directly toward me. I slammed the brakes. My tires screamed. The steering wheel shook violently in my hands. And then, impact. The sound was deafening. Metal folding into metal, glass exploding like fireworks. My chest slammed against the seatbelt so hard it knocked the air out of me. Everything spun. The world tilted sideways. And then, nothing. Or at least, that's what they thought. Because here's the thing about dying. Sometimes, you don't. Sometimes your body just looks like it did. I learned later that my heart rate dropped dangerously low. My breathing was barely detectable. The paramedics said my pulse was so faint they almost missed it. They called it traumatic shock. Severe hypothermia from the rain and blood loss. My body basically shut itself down to survive. But at the hospital, they made a mistake. A small one. The kind that shouldn't happen but sometimes does. They thought I was gone. Declared dead at 11:42 p.m. Time of death. Those words still make my stomach twist. Because I wasn't dead. Not really. Not yet. The strangest part? I remember pieces of it. Not clearly. Not like normal memories. More like flashes. Distant sounds echoing underwater. Voices. Hands moving me. Cold. So unbelievably cold. I couldn't move. Couldn't open my eyes. Couldn't even breathe deep enough to scream. But somewhere inside my body, I was still there. Still trapped. Still aware. They took me to the morgue. I didn't know that at the time, obviously, but I remember the cold metal. The stiffness. The unbearable heaviness in my chest, like something was sitting on me, crushing every attempt to breathe. I tried to move my fingers. Nothing. Tried to open my mouth. Nothing. My body felt locked. Frozen. Like it didn't belong to me anymore. Imagine being fully aware, but completely unable to move. Like being buried inside your own skin. That was the first moment real fear hit me. Not panic. Not yet. Just this slow, creeping dread that something was terribly wrong. And then I heard it. A zipper. Loud. Sharp. Close to my face. That sound still haunts me. Because that was the moment they sealed me into a body bag. Alive. I wanted to scream. God, I tried. Every ounce of strength I had, I pushed toward my throat. But nothing came out. Not even a whisper. Just silence. Total, suffocating silence. I felt myself being lifted, carried, placed somewhere cold again. And then, stillness. Hours passed. Or minutes. Or maybe days. Time didn't make sense anymore. Everything blurred into darkness and cold and helplessness. But somewhere deep inside me, something kept fighting. A tiny flicker of survival. A voice screaming inside my own mind. You are not dead. You are not dead. You are not dead. And then, I heard my mother crying. Very faint. Like she was standing on the other side of a wall. That was the moment I realized something that made my blood run colder than the morgue ever could. They weren't trying to save me anymore. They were saying goodbye. I heard my mother crying, faint at first, like her voice was coming through layers of thick glass. It sounded broken, desperate, like the kind of crying that comes from somewhere deep in the chest where words don't exist anymore. I wanted to answer her so badly. I wanted to tell her I was still here, that I wasn't gone, that she shouldn't cry like that. But my body refused to listen. I lay there in total darkness, trapped inside myself, feeling every second stretch into eternity. At some point, hands touched me again. Gentle, careful hands this time. Not rushed like before, slower, respectful. I heard soft voices whispering to each other. Someone said my name, Elena. Hearing it felt like a lifeline, like proof that I still existed somehow. The zipper sound came again, louder this time, longer, and cold air brushed against my face. If I could have gasped, I would have. If I could have moved even a single muscle, I would have fought like hell. But I couldn't. Not yet. I felt hands moving my arms, lifting them, adjusting them. My fingers were stiff, heavy, useless. They placed something soft under my head, something smoother than the cold metal I had been lying on before. Later I learned they had decided not to perform an autopsy. The doctors believed the cause of death was obvious, massive trauma from the crash combined with hypothermia and internal bleeding. No suspicious circumstances. No reason to cut me open. That decision, that single decision, probably saved my life. But at the time, lying there in that half-dead silence, I didn't know any of that. All I knew was fear. Deep, suffocating fear that wrapped itself around my thoughts like barbed wire. I started noticing tiny sensations returning. At first, it was barely anything, just a faint twitch in my left hand. So small, I wasn't even sure it really happened. I focused on it with everything I had, like staring at a candle flame in the dark. "Come on, move," I begged silently. "Please, just move." Nothing happened. Minutes passed, or hours. Time had lost all meaning. Then another twitch, slightly stronger this time, real enough that I felt a spark of hope ignite somewhere inside me. That hope was terrifying in its own way, because hope meant I was alive, and being treated like I wasn't. I heard more voices, a man this time, speaking softly, professionally. Something about preparing the body, my body. The word body echoed in my head like thunder. Not Elena, not me, just a body. They began washing me. I felt the warmth of water against my skin, the first warmth I had felt in what felt like forever. That warmth was agony and relief at the same time. My nerves screamed back to life in sharp little bursts of sensation. Pins and needles spread across my arms, my legs, my face. I wanted to scream from the shock of feeling returning, but still, nothing came out. Someone brushed my hair gently, untangling knots I didn't even know were there. I heard them say I looked peaceful. Peaceful. That word made something inside me shatter. I wasn't peaceful. I was terrified. Trapped. Awake inside a body everyone believed was lifeless. And then, slowly, painfully, slowly, my chest tried to rise. The movement was tiny, weak, barely noticeable, but it happened. I felt it. A shallow, shaky breath forced its way into my lungs, like rusty hinges creaking open after years of neglect. The air burned. It burned so badly I thought my chest might explode. Still, no one noticed. Not yet. The breaths were too weak, too shallow. Too quiet, but they were there. I was breathing. Somewhere in the room, soft music started playing. Something calm. Something meant to comfort the living, not the nearly dead. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't so horrifying. I focused on breathing again. In, barely. Out, barely. Each breath felt like climbing a mountain with broken legs. My lungs trembled with the effort. My throat felt glued shut, dry like sandpaper. And then I heard something that made my blood run cold all over again. "She'll be ready for viewing tomorrow." Tomorrow. The word echoed in my head like a gunshot. Tomorrow meant a funeral was coming. Tomorrow meant a coffin. Tomorrow meant dirt. And suddenly, for the first time since the crash, real panic flooded my mind in full force. Not slow dread, not quiet fear, full, screaming panic clawing at the inside of my skull. Because I realized something horrifyingly simple. If I didn't wake up soon, they were going to bury me alive. Panic hit me like a wave crashing straight into my chest, violent and overwhelming. Tomorrow. That word kept repeating in my head like an alarm I couldn't turn off. Tomorrow meant people would come to see me, stand over me, cry, whisper about memories while I lay there pretending to be something I wasn't. Dead. The thought made my mind race faster than my body could possibly keep up with. I focused on breathing again, forcing shallow air in and out, counting silently in my head. 1, 2, 3, inhale. 1, 2, 3, exhale. Each breath still burned, but it was getting stronger, just barely. I tried moving my fingers again. This time, something happened. A faint curl in my index finger, so small it felt like trying to lift a mountain with a thread. But it moved. I felt it move. That tiny motion sent a surge of hope through me so strong it almost hurt. I clung to that feeling like it was the last rope keeping me from falling into darkness forever. More time passed. Voices came and went. Doors opened and closed. I heard drawers sliding, footsteps echoing across tile floors, distant phones ringing somewhere in the building. The world kept moving while I remained trapped in stillness. At some point, hands returned again. Gentle hands, steady and practiced. They lifted me carefully, adjusting my arms, crossing them over my stomach. I felt fabric brushing against my skin, soft, unfamiliar. My funeral clothes. The realization made my stomach twist violently, though my body didn't show it. Someone smoothed the fabric along my chest and shoulders, tugging slightly to make everything look neat. Perfect. Presentable. Ready. I heard quiet conversation above me. Someone mentioned how young I was. Another voice responded with sympathy, the kind people use when tragedy feels unfair. They talked about my accident like it was already a finished story, like my life had been wrapped up and filed away. If I could have cried, I would have. Instead, tears stayed trapped somewhere behind closed eyelids that refused to open. Eventually, I felt myself being moved again. Lifted, carried. My body swayed slightly with each step of the people holding me. That motion made dizziness roll through my head like heavy fog. I wanted to scream, to thrash, to do anything that would make them realize I was still alive. But all I could manage was another shallow breath, slightly deeper than the last. Then I felt something beneath me that was different from the cold metal before. Softer, cushioned, fabric-lined. The air around me changed to less sterile, less clinical. I heard wood creak faintly as my body settled into place. The coffin. Even without seeing it, I knew exactly where I was. The realization struck me so hard it felt like lightning tearing through my chest. My breathing quickened in short, weak bursts. I forced my fingers to move again, focusing every ounce of energy I had into that one simple action. Another twitch. Slightly stronger this time. Still small, but real. Footsteps echoed around me, then faded. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. For a while, there was nothing except the faint sound of my own breathing and the pounding of my heart slowly growing louder in my ears. That sound became my proof of life, my evidence that I wasn't gone. Hours later, at least I think it was hours, I heard voices again. Many voices this time. Soft whispers layered over quiet, sobbing. The air felt heavier somehow, filled with emotion so thick it was almost physical. The viewing had started. I heard my mother first. Her voice broke instantly when she spoke my name. She looks so peaceful, someone said nearby, the same word again. Peaceful. I wanted to scream at them that I wasn't peaceful, that I was trapped inside a nightmare with no way out. My father spoke too, his voice rough and strained like sandpaper. I had never heard him sound that weak before. The sound of him crying shattered something deep inside me. Then I felt something warm brush against my hand. A hand, someone holding mine. My mother. The warmth of her skin against mine felt unreal, like touching sunlight after being buried underground. I focused everything I had into moving my fingers, just once, just enough for her to feel it. Move, I begged myself. Please, please move. For a second, nothing happened. Then, barely noticeable, I felt my finger twitch again. Hope flared inside me, sharp and desperate. I pushed harder, gathering every bit of strength left inside my exhausted body. Another twitch, slightly stronger. "Did you feel that?" My mother whispered suddenly, her voice trembling. My heart pounded wildly at her words. For one brief, terrifying moment, I thought she noticed, but another voice answered softly, calm and dismissive. "It's just nerves. That happens sometimes after death." After death. The words hit me like a punch to the chest. My mother didn't say anything else, but I felt her grip tighten around my hand, trembling. She believed them. She believed I was gone. And just like that, the moment passed. The one chance I might have had slipped away into silence. The room slowly emptied again as visitors came and went, leaving behind whispers, flowers, and the suffocating weight of grief. I lay there, listening, breathing, fighting against the heavy fog dragging me back toward darkness. Because now there was a new word echoing inside my head, louder than anything before. Tomorrow. The funeral. And deep down, I felt something growing stronger inside my chest, my heartbeat, louder and faster than before. But I also knew something else. Time was running out. Time became a blur after the viewing ended. Voices faded, footsteps disappeared, and eventually the room fell into a silence so deep it felt like it was pressing down on my chest. I lay there inside the coffin, surrounded by darkness behind my closed eyelids, listening to the faint sound of my own breathing. It was still weak, but stronger than before. Each breath scraped through my throat like broken glass, dry and painful. But it was there. I was still breathing, still alive, still trapped. At some point, I heard the soft creak of the door opening again. Quiet footsteps entered the room, slow and hesitant. I recognized them immediately, my mother. I didn't need to see her to know. There was something about the way she moved, the way her breathing sounded shaky and uneven, like every step cost her strength. She didn't speak at first. I heard fabric rustling, then the faint sound of something being placed beside me. Flowers, probably. She always loved flowers. Even when I was little, she used to keep fresh ones in the kitchen, saying they made the house feel alive. The irony of that thought almost made me laugh, if I had been capable of laughing. After a long moment, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm so sorry, baby." The words hit me harder than any physical pain I had felt since the crash. Sorry. She sounded broken, lost, like someone drowning with no one to pull them out. I wanted to answer her so badly it hurt. I wanted to tell her none of this was her fault, that I was still here, that she didn't need to apologize, but my body still refused to obey. I focused again on my fingers, trying to move them, trying to send any signal that I was alive. A small tremor passed through my hand, stronger than before. I felt it clearly this time, but she didn't react. Either it was too small, or she thought it was just another post-death reflex. Her hand touched mine again, warm and trembling. She squeezed gently, her thumb brushing across my knuckles the way she used to when I was sick as a kid. The familiarity of that gesture nearly broke me. Then she started talking again, quietly, like she was telling me secrets. She told me how empty the house felt without me, how my father hadn't spoken much since the accident, how my little sister kept asking when I was coming home. Hearing that almost shattered my mind completely. My sister. She still thought I was coming home. That thought lit a fire inside my chest, stronger than anything I had felt before. I couldn't die like this. I couldn't disappear while she was still waiting for me. I pushed harder against the numbness swallowing my body. My chest rose slightly deeper this time. A real breath. Louder. Rougher. My throat twitched. A dry, painful sensation building like pressure inside a sealed container. For a second, I thought I might actually make a sound. Just one small noise, anything that would make her notice. But the moment passed. The pressure faded, leaving behind the same horrible silence. After a while, my mother stood up. I heard her sniff quietly, wiping tears away. "Goodbye, for now," she whispered. The words echoed in my head like a death sentence. Goodbye. The door opened again. Her footsteps faded, and once more, I was alone. Completely alone. Hours passed, maybe the entire night. My body kept fighting, slowly waking up piece by piece. My heartbeat grew stronger, louder, pounding steadily in my ears. My lungs expanded slightly deeper with each breath. Sensation crept back into my arms, my legs, my face. Pain followed right behind it, sharp, throbbing pain that spread through my ribs and shoulders like fire. But pain meant life. Pain meant I wasn't gone yet. Then, early in what I assumed was morning, everything changed. I heard multiple voices again, louder this time. Purposeful. Busy. The atmosphere felt different, tense, organized, final. Someone said the words that made ice flood through my veins. "It's time." Those two words echoed endlessly inside my skull. I felt hands grip the sides of the coffin. Movement followed slow at first, then steady. My body shifted slightly as they lifted me. The motion sent waves of dizziness crashing through my head. My breathing quickened again, shallow and panicked. I wanted to fight, to scream, to slam my fists against the coffin lid, but my body still wasn't strong enough. Not yet. Footsteps echoed beneath me as they carried me forward. Voices murmured prayers, soft and respectful. I heard doors opening, then closing again. The air changed, cooler somehow. Open space, outside. I could hear distant wind brushing through trees, faint, and hollow. And that's when a terrifying realization settled into my mind, like a stone sinking to the bottom of deep water. They weren't just moving me anymore, they were taking me to the cemetery. The air felt different the moment they carried me outside. Even through the coffin, I could sense it. The coolness, the faint movement of wind, the distant sounds of birds somewhere far away, normal sounds, everyday sounds. The kind of sounds that suddenly felt terrifying because they reminded me that the world was still moving while I was about to be buried underneath it. I heard gravel crunch beneath slow footsteps. Each step echoed through the wood around me, vibrating faintly against my body. My breathing grew faster, rougher now, no longer the shallow, barely there breaths from before. I could feel my lungs working harder, forcing air in and out, like they were finally waking up from a long sleep. My heart pounded violently in my chest, so loud I was convinced everyone around me should be able to hear it. But no one reacted. No one noticed. They kept walking. Then voices surrounded me. Many voices. Soft murmurs, quiet crying, the distant sound of someone clearing their throat before speaking. A man's voice began talking slowly, calmly, measured words, formal words. I couldn't make out every sentence, but I understood enough. A prayer, a farewell, a final goodbye. The funeral had begun. Panic flooded through me so violently it felt like my entire body was on fire. I tried moving my arms again. This time, they responded slightly. Just a faint tightening of muscles, a tiny twitch against the soft lining beneath me. It wasn't much, but it was more than before. Hope sparked again, wild and desperate. I forced my fingers to curl. Slowly, painfully. My hand trembled, barely lifting from its resting position before falling back again. The effort drained me instantly, leaving my chest heaving with weak, uneven breaths. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. A hollow, heavy sound. Wood scraping against wood. The unmistakable creak of thick hinges shifting under pressure. The lid. They were closing the coffin. The sound dragged on for what felt like forever, slow and final, sealing me into complete darkness. Even though my eyes were already closed, the sensation of that final closure felt suffocating, like the last door to the world had just slammed shut. Then, silence. Absolute silence. For a few seconds, nothing happened. My breathing sounded thunderous in the enclosed space, bouncing back at me from every direction. The air felt thicker now, warmer, heavier. Panic clawed its way through my chest. I tried to scream again, forcing everything I had toward my throat. A rasp escaped, barely audible, dry and broken, more like air scraping over sandpaper than an actual sound. But it was sound. My first sound. I froze, stunned by it. If I could make that noise again, maybe someone would hear it. Maybe someone would stop this. I tried again. Forced more air upward. Another rasp slipped out, slightly louder than before. Still weak, but real. Outside the coffin, footsteps shifted. Voices murmured closer. My heart pounded faster. Did they hear me? Did someone notice? But the voices continued calmly, uninterrupted. No alarm, no shouting, no sudden movement. They hadn't heard it. My hope flickered, then trembled dangerously close to dying out. And then came the worst sound of all. A thick rope sliding, wood groaning under weight. The coffin tilted slightly beneath me, shifting at an angle that made my stomach twist violently. They were lowering me into the ground. The realization shattered whatever calm I had left. Pure, uncontrollable panic took over. My chest heaved violently as I forced deeper breaths into my lungs. My arms twitched again, stronger now, enough that I could feel the fabric around me shift slightly. My fingers curled harder, nails pressing into the lining beneath them. I pushed upward weakly, barely making contact with the lid above me. The wood felt solid, unforgiving, too strong to break. Then, the rope stopped moving. A dull thud vibrated through the coffin as it settled into place, the bottom of the grave. For a moment, everything went quiet again. I held what little breath I had, listening desperately for any sign that someone had noticed something was wrong. Nothing, just silence, followed by a single horrifying sound. Dirt. The first shovelful of dirt struck the top of the coffin with a heavy, hollow thump. The sound exploded through the confined space like thunder. My entire body jolted in response. Another shovelful followed. Thump. Then another. Thump. Each impact felt louder than the last, like the world itself was collapsing on top of me. Panic reached levels I didn't even know were possible. I forced my arms upward again, slamming weakly against the lid. This time, My hand actually hit the wood with enough force to make a faint knocking sound. My throat burned as I tried to scream again. Air scraped violently upward. A sound burst out hoarse, broken, but unmistakably human. A scream, weak but real. Above me, the sound of dirt suddenly stopped. Silence fell. Complete, terrifying silence. And for the first time since the accident, I thought someone might have heard me. Silence fell so suddenly it felt unreal, like the entire world above me had frozen mid-breath. No more dirt hitting the coffin, no more muffled voices, nothing. Just my own breathing, ragged and uneven, echoing inside the tight wooden space around me. My heart slammed violently against my ribs, so hard it felt like it might crack them open from the inside. For a few terrifying seconds, I wondered if I had imagined it, if the scream that tore from my throat had been nothing more than a sound trapped inside my head. But then, I heard something. A voice above me, distant, muffled through layers of wood and soil. Wait, just one word. But it cut through the silence like lightning. My mind exploded with desperate hope. They heard me. Someone heard me. I forced my arms upward again, slamming my palms weakly against the coffin lid. Knock. The sound was faint, dull, but inside the coffin it felt deafening. I did it again. Knock. Knock. Each movement sent sharp waves of pain through my shoulders and chest, but I didn't care. Pain meant I could still move. Pain meant I wasn't gone yet. Above me, voices started rising, confused and overlapping. Someone said, "Did you hear that?" Another voice answered, shaky and uncertain. It sounded like knocking. Hope surged so violently through my chest that I almost choked on my next breath. I gathered every bit of strength left in my body and slammed both hands upward again. Knock, knock, knock. This time, the reaction was immediate. I heard shouting, real shouting now, panic in their voices, movement, dirt shifting. Someone yelled, "Stop! Stop digging!" Another voice, louder, frantic now. "Get it open! Get it open now!" Tears streamed down my face, hot against my cold skin. I hadn't been able to cry before, but now the tears came uncontrollably, mixing with the dirt and dust that filtered faintly through tiny cracks in the wood. I kept knocking, weaker each time, my strength fading fast. The air inside the coffin felt thinner now, harder to breathe. Every inhale scraped painfully through my throat, dragging in stale, suffocating air. Above me, the sound of frantic digging filled the silence, shovels striking soil, hands clawing at dirt. Heavy breathing. Someone was crying loudly hysterical, broken sobs that I recognized instantly. My mother. Hearing her voice gave me one final burst of strength. I slammed my hand upward again, barely managing one last weak knock. Then, something changed. A sharp metallic sound rang out above me, tools striking wood. Fast, desperate. The coffin shook violently as something heavy slammed against the lid. Once, twice, 3 times. Each impact echoed through my skull like thunder. Wood cracked. A sharp, splintering sound tore through the confined space, followed by the sudden rush of cold air flooding inside. Real air. Fresh air. I gasped violently as it hit my lungs, the sensation so overwhelming it felt like drowning in reverse. Light burst through the opening above me, blinding, white, unbearable after so much darkness. I tried to open my eyes, but they burned too badly. Shapes moved above me, shadows leaning closer, voices shouting, crying, praying all at once. Hands reached down, grabbing my shoulders, lifting me upward. My body felt weightless and impossibly heavy at the same time. I heard my mother screaming my name, over and over again, her voice breaking with every syllable. "Elena! Elena! Oh my God, she's alive!" The words echoed around me, surreal and impossible. Alive. They were finally saying it. Not body. Not gone. Alive. I felt arms wrap around me, tight and shaking. My mother's arms. Her tears soaked into my hair as she clung to me like she was afraid I might disappear again if she let go. My chest heaved violently as I struggled to breathe real air. Each inhale sharp and painful, but beautiful beyond words. Sirens wailed somewhere in the distance, growing louder by the second. People shouted instructions, voices full of panic and disbelief. Someone kept repeating, "This can't be real. This can't be real." But it was real. Every second of it was real. As they laid me onto the cold grass, the sky stretched above me wide, endless, impossibly bright. I stared at it through blurry vision, tears streaming down the sides of my face. I had never seen the sky look so beautiful before, never appreciated air the way I did in that moment, never understood how fragile life really was. The last thing I remember before everything faded into darkness again was my mother's voice, trembling but full of something I hadn't heard in days. Hope. And just before I lost consciousness, one final thought passed through my mind clearer than anything else. They buried me alive, but somehow I survived.
How a guy ruined my entire high school life. And the worst part is, for the longest time, I thought it was my fault. Like genuinely, I spent years thinking that if I had just been prettier, louder, cooler, maybe none of this would have happened. I've never really told this whole story before. Not like this. Not from beginning to end, because honestly, it still makes my chest feel tight when I think about it. But recently I started realizing how many girls go through things like this and stay silent, just like I did, so I guess this is me finally saying it out loud. So let's go all the way back to my first year of high school. I was 14, painfully shy, the kind of girl who rehearses what she's going to say before raising her hand in class, and then still decides not to say it because she's scared it'll sound stupid. I didn't know anyone when school started. Like, not a single familiar face. Everyone else seemed to already have their friend groups from middle school laughing in hallways, hugging each other, acting like they owned the place, and I just existed in the background. I remember walking through the entrance on the very first day, holding my backpack straps way too tight, trying to look confident while feeling like I was about to throw up. I kept telling myself, okay, just survive today, just make it through the first day without embarrassing yourself, and everything will be fine. But it didn't feel fine, not even close. Lunchtime was the worst. I'd sit at the edge of a table pretending to scroll on my phone so I didn't have to look around and notice how alone I felt. I'd laugh quietly at videos I didn't even find funny, just so it looked like I had something going on. And then he showed up. Let's call him Jake. Not his real name, but honestly, he doesn't deserve the real one anyway. Jake was the kind of guy everyone noticed. Loud, confident, always joking, always surrounded by people. Teachers liked him because he could turn on this fake charm whenever he wanted. Students liked him because he was entertaining. He walked like he owned every hallway. And somehow, one day, he sat next to me in math class. I remember it so clearly because I panicked immediately, like full internal panic mode. My first thought was, why is he sitting here? Did I accidentally take someone's seat? Am I about to get yelled at? But he just dropped his bag, leaned back in his chair, and looked at my paper and said, "Wait, you already finished this?" I froze for a second because no one ever talked to me like that before. Not casually, not like I mattered. I nodded and said, "Yeah, I think so." And he smiled, like actually smiled, and said, "Damn, you're smart. I'm copying yours." And then he laughed like it was the funniest thing ever. I laughed too, even though it wasn't that funny, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt since school started. Relief. Like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't invisible anymore. From that day on, he kept sitting next to me. Every single math class. At first, it felt harmless. He'd ask me questions about homework, make dumb jokes, complain about teachers. Sometimes he'd poke fun at me for being quiet, but it felt playful, not mean. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Soon, people started noticing me, but not because of who I was, because I was sitting next to him. Suddenly, girls who had never spoken to me before would glance in my direction. Guys would look at me like they were trying to figure out why Jake was talking to me, and I'm not gonna lie. Part of me liked it. For the first time since school started, I felt seen, like I finally existed in the same world as everyone else. Then one afternoon, after class, he walked next to me in the hallway and said, "You know, you're not as boring as I thought." I laughed awkwardly and asked, "What did you think?" And he shrugged and said, "I thought you were one of those weird quiet girls who never talks." He laughed again, like it was just a joke, and I laughed too, but something about it stuck in my chest. That tiny sting of embarrassment that you pretend not to feel. That was probably the first red flag, but I didn't see it that way back then. Back then I thought, he's just teasing me. That's what friends do, right? And yeah, somewhere along the way, I started calling him my friend. Looking back now, I think that's how it started. Not with something obviously cruel, but with tiny little comments that didn't seem like a big deal at the time. The kind of things that make you feel weird inside, but you brush it off because you don't want to seem dramatic. At first, Jake would joke about how quiet I was. He'd say things like, "Do you ever talk at home, or is this just your personality?" And everyone around us would laugh. I'd laugh too, obviously, because what else was I supposed to do? If you don't laugh, you look sensitive. If you do laugh, at least you look like you can take a joke. But inside, it made me feel smaller every single time. Still, I told myself it was normal, that this is just how friendships worked in high school, that teasing meant you were accepted, that being noticed, even in a slightly embarrassing way, was better than being invisible. And honestly, I trusted him. That's the part that hurts the most when I think about it now. I trusted him. I started sitting with him and his friends at lunch, which should have been a good thing, right? Sitting at a table with people, laughing, feeling included. That's what I wanted so badly in the beginning. But something about that table always made me feel like I didn't belong there. Like I was an extra in someone else's movie. They'd talk about parties I was never invited to, inside jokes I didn't understand, people they all knew from years before. Sometimes Jake would randomly say something about me out loud, like, "Did you guys know she studies during lunch sometimes?" Or, "She literally rewrites her notes at home for fun." And everyone would laugh like it was hilarious. I'd force a smile, shrug my shoulders, pretend it didn't bother me, but every time he did that, it felt like he was slowly turning me into a joke. One afternoon, I remember wearing this sweater I loved. It was nothing special, just soft and comfortable, but it made me feel good about myself, which was rare back then. When I walked into class, Jake looked at me, raised his eyebrows, and said loudly, "Wow, you actually tried today." A few people nearby turned to look. Someone laughed. My face got hot instantly, like my skin was burning. I laughed too, obviously, because that's what I always did. But that comment stayed in my head the entire day. I kept looking down at my sweater, wondering if it looked weird, if it made me look stupid, if everyone else secretly agreed with him. That night, I stood in front of my mirror for way too long, holding different shirts up to my body, suddenly questioning every single thing I wore. And that was new for me. Before him, I didn't think that much about my appearance, but after that, everything felt like it could be judged. Everything felt risky. Then the jokes got more personal. He'd comment on my hair, my voice, the way I walked, the way I answered questions in class. "Why do you sound so nervous all the time?" "Relax, you're not gonna die." "You look like you didn't sleep for a week." Every sentence wrapped in laughter. Every insult disguised as humor, and whenever I looked hurt, he'd say the same thing over and over again. "Relax, it's just a joke." That sentence became his shield, like it erased any responsibility for what he said, like my feelings didn't matter as long as he was smiling. Slowly, people around us started repeating his jokes. That's something no one really warns you about, how fast cruelty spreads when someone popular starts it. One girl copied the way he mocked my voice. Another guy started calling me nicknames that I didn't understand at first, but later realized were meant to embarrass me, and somehow, without even realizing it, I went from being invisible to being known for all the wrong reasons. But the moment things truly shifted, the moment I realized this wasn't harmless anymore, happened on a random Tuesday morning. I remember that day way too clearly. I walked into school, expecting nothing unusual, just another normal day of surviving classes and pretending everything was fine. But the second I stepped into the hallway, something felt off. People were looking at me, not normal looking, not curious, but whispering. Quiet laughter, side glances that stopped the second I looked back at them. My stomach dropped instantly. That kind of silence, the kind that follows you as you walk. It's terrifying when you don't know why it's happening. I kept walking, pretending not to notice, telling myself I was imagining things, that I was just being paranoid. But then I passed a group of girls, and one of them leaned toward another and whispered something while looking straight at me. And they both laughed. That was the moment panic really kicked in. I remember gripping my backpack strap so tightly my fingers hurt. My heart was pounding so loud it felt like everyone could hear it. I kept asking myself, what did I do? Did I say something wrong yesterday? Did I forget something? Did someone spread a rumor about me? But I had no answers. Just this horrible feeling growing heavier with every step I took. By the time I reached my locker, my hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped my books. I kept my head down, trying to act normal, but I could feel eyes on me from every direction. You know that feeling when you walk into a room and suddenly feel like you don't belong there anymore? Like something changed overnight and you're the only one who doesn't know what happened? That's exactly what it felt like. I opened my locker, pretending to look for something, even though I didn't even remember what class I had next. I just needed a second to breathe, a second to think. But before I could calm down, I heard footsteps behind me. A girl from my English class walked up to me. We weren't friends, but we had talked a few times before. She crossed her arms, looked at me with this weird expression and said, Did you really send those messages?" My heart stopped, literally stopped. I blinked at her, completely confused, and said, "What messages?" She rolled her eyes like I was lying and said, "Don't act innocent." And then she walked away before I could even ask another question. That's when the panic turned into fear, real fear, the kind that makes your stomach twist so tight you feel like you're about to throw up. I stood there for a few seconds, frozen, replaying her words over and over again in my head. What messages? What was she talking about? I didn't send anything to anyone. I barely texted people at all back then. I didn't have that many contacts in my phone to begin with, so how could I have sent something bad enough to make people stare at me like that? I tried to shake it off and went to my first class, but the whispering didn't stop. Every time I looked up, someone looked away quickly. A few people were holding their phones, glancing between their screens and my face like they were comparing something. My chest felt tight the entire time. I couldn't focus on the lesson at all. The teacher was talking, writing things on the board, asking questions, but all I could hear was a faint sound of giggling from the back of the room. At one point, I heard my name, not loudly, just whispered, but clear enough to make my heart race even faster. I kept telling myself, just get through this class, just survive this hour, then you'll figure it out. But the second the bell rang, everything got worse. As soon as I stepped into the hallway, my phone buzzed. I looked down and saw a message from a number I didn't recognize. It said, "Why would you say that about me?" My hand started trembling again. I stared at the message, completely confused. Before I could even reply, another message came in, and then another. Different numbers, different names, all asking similar questions. "Do you hate me that much? What did I ever do to you? You're actually so fake." I felt like the ground disappeared under my feet. I remember leaning against the wall because my legs suddenly felt weak. I scrolled through the messages, trying to understand what was happening, but nothing made sense. I hadn't said anything about anyone. I hadn't posted anything. I hadn't sent messages to people, at least not from my own account. That's when I heard someone behind me say, "Oh my God, she's reading them right now." I turned slowly and saw two girls watching me from a few steps away. One of them was holding her phone, her screen facing the other girl. They both looked at me like I was some kind of villain in a movie, like I had done something terrible. I opened my mouth to ask what was going on, but my voice felt stuck in my throat. I couldn't even form words properly. And then one of them walked up to me and held her phone in front of my face. "Explain this," she said. I looked at the screen, and that's when my world completely fell apart. It was an Instagram account with my name on it, my profile picture, my username. Everything looked exactly like my real account, except it wasn't mine. And on the screen, there were messages. Horrible messages. Mean messages. Messages sent to different students in our school. Insults, rumors, cruel jokes, things about people's appearances, their families, their secrets, things I would never, ever say to anyone. My vision started to blur as I read them. My brain couldn't process what I was seeing. It felt unreal, like watching someone else's life instead of my own. I shook my head slowly and whispered, "That's not me." But the girl just scoffed and said, "Then who is it?" And honestly, I didn't have an answer. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the screen, feeling like my entire life was collapsing in front of me. I kept staring at that screen like if I looked long enough, the messages would magically change into something harmless. But they didn't. They were still there. My name at the top, my picture, my fake account sending things that made me feel sick just reading them. I remember whispering again, "That's not me. I swear that's not me." But the girl holding the phone just rolled her eyes and said, "Then why does it look exactly like your account?" And honestly, I didn't know what to say, because she was right. It did look like my account. Same profile picture, same username, just with one tiny extra letter at the end that most people probably didn't even notice. Whoever made it knew exactly what they were doing. Within minutes, more people started gathering around. Some were whispering, some were laughing quietly, some were just staring at me like I was something disgusting they accidentally stepped on. I felt trapped in the middle of the hallway like there was nowhere to run. Someone behind me said, "She's actually so fake." Another voice said, "I always knew she was weird." Every sentence hit like a punch to my chest. I wanted to disappear. I wanted the floor to open up and swallow me whole so I didn't have to stand there anymore. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. It hit the floor with a loud crack that echoed way too loudly in my ears. Nobody helped me pick it up. Nobody asked if I was okay. They just kept staring, laughing, whispering, judging. Somehow, I managed to grab my phone and push through the crowd, walking as fast as I could without actually running. Because running would have made it worse. Running would have made me look guilty. But the moment I turned the corner into an empty hallway, I couldn't hold it together anymore. Tears started falling before I even realized I was crying. Not loud crying, just silent tears sliding down my face while my chest felt like it was collapsing in on itself. I locked myself inside the nearest bathroom stall and sat there, shaking, trying to breathe normally. I kept replaying everything in my head, the messages, the whispers, the looks. None of it made sense. I didn't know who would do this to me, or why. I wasn't popular. I wasn't involved in drama. I barely talked to anyone, so why me? That question kept repeating in my head like a broken record. Why me? Why me? Why me? After a few minutes, my phone buzzed again, and again, and again. I wiped my eyes and looked at the screen. More messages, dozens of them now, some angry, some sarcastic, some straight up cruel. You think you're better than everyone? You're actually pathetic. Don't ever talk to me again. I felt like I was drowning, like no matter how hard I tried to explain that it wasn't me, nobody would believe me anyway. Because from their perspective, the evidence was right there. Screenshots, messages, my name attached to all of it. After what felt like forever, I finally forced myself to leave the bathroom and go back to class. I didn't want to, but skipping would have just made things worse. The walk back felt longer than usual. Every step felt heavy, like I was dragging invisible weight behind me. When I entered the classroom, the noise inside dropped slightly. Not completely silent, but quiet enough for me to notice. People turned their heads. A few of them smirked. Others whispered to the person sitting next to them. I walked to my seat without looking at anyone, trying to pretend I didn't notice the tension in the room, and that's when I saw him. Jake, sitting in his usual spot, leaning back in his chair like nothing in the world was wrong. He looked at me for a second and smiled. Not a warm smile, not a friendly one, just a small, weird smirk that lasted maybe half a second, but it made my stomach twist in a way I couldn't explain. At the time, I didn't fully understand why that look bothered me so much. I just felt uneasy, like something inside me was trying to warn me about something my brain hadn't figured out yet. He leaned forward slightly and whispered, "Damn, looks like you're famous now." My heart skipped a beat. I looked at him, confused, hurt, scared all at once, and whispered back, "It's not me. Someone made a fake account." He shrugged like it was no big deal and said, "Relax, people will forget about it." But the way he said it, so casual, so unconcerned, felt wrong, very wrong. And deep down, a tiny voice inside my head started whispering something terrifying. What if? He knew more than he was letting on. At first, I tried to believe him. When Jake said people would forget about it, I clung to that sentence like it was some kind of lifeline. I kept telling myself, okay, maybe this will blow over. Maybe tomorrow things will be normal again. Maybe people will realize it wasn't me. But the next day, things were worse. Way worse. The moment I walked into school, I could feel it again. That same heavy tension in the air, like everyone already knew something about me that I didn't even understand myself. This time, nobody even tried to hide the staring. People looked straight at me, whispering openly now, laughing behind their hands like I was some kind of joke they all shared. I kept my head down and walked faster than usual, hoping to reach my locker before anyone said anything, but I didn't make it. Halfway down the hallway, I heard someone behind me say loudly, "Hey, don't text her. She might expose your secrets." A few people laughed, not quietly, loudly, like it was the funniest thing they'd heard all day. My face burned instantly, and I could feel tears threatening to spill again, but I forced myself to keep walking. Don't cry, I told myself. Don't cry in front of them. That would just make it worse. When I finally reached my locker, my hands were shaking so badly I struggled to put in the code. I messed it up twice, which made the girl standing next to me sigh loudly and roll her eyes like I was wasting her time. I whispered sorry without even thinking, even though I hadn't actually done anything wrong. That's how bad it had already gotten. I was apologizing just for existing near people. Classes became unbearable. Every time I raised my hand to answer a question, I heard someone whisper something under their breath. Sometimes it was my name, sometimes it was laughter, sometimes it was silence that felt even worse than laughter. Teachers didn't notice anything at first, or maybe they noticed but didn't understand how serious it was. To them, I probably just looked quieter than usual, but inside, I felt like I was falling apart piece by piece. Lunchtime, which used to be awkward but manageable, became the worst part of my day. The table where Jake and his friends sat suddenly didn't feel safe anymore. The first time I walked toward them after everything happened, the conversation stopped the moment I got close. Jake looked up at me, then looked at the others and smirked slightly. "Careful what you say around her," he joked. "You might end up in her DMs later." Everyone laughed, loudly, right in front of me. I stood there frozen, my tray shaking slightly in my hands, feeling like someone had just slapped me across the face. I forced a weak laugh even though it felt like my chest was breaking open, and sat down anyway because I didn't know where else to go. But the laughter didn't stop. Someone across the table said, "So, who are you exposing today?" Another voice chimed in, "Yeah, better behave, she's watching." Every sentence felt like another knife twisting deeper into my chest. I barely touched my food that day. I just stared down at my tray, pretending to listen while silently wishing I could disappear. After that, I stopped sitting with them altogether. Instead, I started eating alone. At first, I tried sitting at random tables, hoping maybe someone would let me stay, but every time I sat down, the same thing happened. People would exchange looks, whisper. Sometimes they'd even get up and move to another table, like sitting near me was contagious, like I carried some invisible disease. Eventually, I stopped trying. I started bringing my lunch to the bathroom. I know that sounds dramatic, but it was the only place where nobody stared at me. I'd lock myself inside a stall, sit on the closed toilet seat, and eat as fast as possible while listening to footsteps outside, praying nobody would knock on the door and tell me to leave. And every single day, the same thought ran through my head. How did my life turn into this so fast? Just a few weeks earlier, I had been laughing with Jake, thinking I finally had a friend. Now, I couldn't even sit in a cafeteria without feeling like I was being judged by everyone around me. But the worst part wasn't the loneliness. It was the doubt that slowly started growing inside me. The little voice that whispered, "Maybe you deserve this. Maybe you did something wrong and just don't remember. Maybe people wouldn't hate you this much if you weren't actually the problem." That voice in my head got louder every single day. At first, it was just a whisper. A quiet little thought that showed up when I was alone. But after a while, it wasn't quiet anymore. It became constant. Like background noise I couldn't turn off. Every morning started to feel heavier than the last. Waking up felt like the hardest part of the day. I'd open my eyes and immediately feel that tight feeling in my chest, that sinking weight in my stomach when I remembered I had to go back to school again. Sometimes I'd just lie there staring at the ceiling, hoping maybe if I stayed still long enough, time would stop and I wouldn't have to move. But of course, time never stopped. My alarm would keep ringing, louder and louder, until I finally forced myself to get up. Getting dressed became this whole stressful routine. I'd stand in front of my closet for way too long, holding different shirts against my body, trying to guess which one would attract the least attention. Not the prettiest one, not the ugliest one, just the most invisible one. Neutral colors, simple clothes, anything that wouldn't make someone laugh or point something out. I stopped wearing things I used to love. That sweater I liked so much, I never touched it again. It stayed buried in the back of my closet like a reminder of how stupid I felt that day in class. Even brushing my hair felt stressful. I kept asking myself, does this look weird? Does this make me look ugly? Will someone comment on this today? And no matter what I chose, I never felt safe. At school, things didn't improve. If anything, they got worse in quieter ways. The loud jokes slowly turned into subtle cruelty. People didn't always laugh out loud anymore, but they still whispered, still stared, still avoided sitting near me whenever possible. Teachers began noticing I wasn't raising my hand anymore. I used to answer questions sometimes, even if my voice shook, but now I avoided eye contact completely. I'd stare down at my notebook, pretending to write something, hoping they wouldn't call on me. One teacher asked me after class if everything was okay. I remember forcing a smile and saying, "Yeah, I'm just tired." That became my default answer. I'm just tired. Even though what I really wanted to say was, I feel like I'm drowning and nobody sees it. At home, I started changing too. My parents noticed it before I even realized how obvious it had become. I stopped talking as much during dinner. I used to tell little stories about school, nothing special, just random things about classes or homework. But suddenly, I had nothing to say, or at least nothing I was willing to share. My mom would ask, "How was school today?" And I'd shrug and say, "Fine. always fine. Everything was always fine, even when it wasn't, especially when it wasn't. I spent more time in my room than ever before. The second I got home, I'd go upstairs, close my door, and sit on my bed without even turning on the light sometimes. Just sitting there in silence, staring at my phone, reading old messages over and over again, wondering how everything got so messed up. Some nights I cried so quietly I barely made a sound. I'd press my face into my pillow so nobody would hear me because the last thing I wanted was questions. Questions meant explanations, and explanations meant admitting how bad things really were, and I wasn't ready to do that yet. One evening, my mom knocked on my door unexpectedly. I quickly wiped my face, hoping she wouldn't notice anything, but moms always notice more than you think. She walked in slowly and sat on the edge of my bed, looking at me in that careful way parents do when they know something is wrong but don't want to scare you off. She asked softly, "Are you sure everything is okay at school?" That question made my throat tighten instantly. For a second, I almost told her everything. I almost broke down right there and said, "No, nothing is okay. I'm miserable. I feel alone. I feel hated." But instead, I smiled. A fake, weak smile that didn't even feel like mine. And I said, "Yeah, I'm just stressed about homework." She didn't look convinced, not at all, but she nodded slowly and said, "Okay. Just remember, you can tell me anything." After she left the room, I sat there staring at the closed door, feeling this wave of guilt wash over me, because deep down, I knew I was lying to the one person who actually cared about me, but the truth felt too heavy to say out loud. Saying it would have made everything real, and at that time, I still believed maybe I could handle it on my own, but what I didn't realize yet was that things were about to get even worse, because the fake account didn't stop posting. In fact, it started posting more. At first, it was just messages, private ones, things only a few people saw, but after a while, the fake account started posting publicly. That's when everything spiraled out of control again. I remember the exact moment I found out. It was late at night, and I was lying in bed, scrolling through my phone, trying to distract myself from my thoughts. I didn't even feel tired anymore at that point. Sleep had become this thing that only happened when my body was too exhausted to stay awake. Around midnight, my phone buzzed. Then again and again. Notifications kept popping up so fast that my screen barely stayed still. At first, I thought it was spam or something random, but when I unlocked my phone, my heart dropped instantly. Someone had tagged me in a post. Actually, multiple posts. My fingers felt numb as I tapped on the notification, and there it was. That same fake account, my fake account, posting screenshots, captions, comments, pretending to be me. Except now, it wasn't just private insults anymore. It was public humiliation. The post showed a picture of a girl from my class, and underneath it, the fake account had written this long caption making fun of her appearance, saying horrible things about her weight, her clothes, her family, things that made my stomach twist just reading them. And the worst part, everyone thought it was me. Comments were already piling up underneath the post, angry ones, hurt ones, some people tagging their friends, telling them to look at what I had said. My chest felt tight like I couldn't breathe properly. I whispered to myself, "This isn't happening. This isn't happening." But it was. It was happening right in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I tried reporting the account immediately. I clicked every option I could find: impersonation, harassment, fake identity. My hands were shaking so badly I kept misclicking the buttons, but reporting it didn't make the post disappear right away. It just stayed there, collecting more comments, more anger, more hate. Within minutes, new messages started flooding into my inbox again. This time, they were worse, much worse. "You're actually disgusting. Who do you think you are? You better watch your back at school tomorrow." That last message made my stomach twist so hard I thought I was going to throw up. Watch your back. I read those words over and over again, feeling fear crawl up my spine like ice. That night, I barely slept at all. I kept refreshing the page, hoping maybe the account would get taken down overnight, hoping maybe this would all disappear before morning, but it didn't. Morning came way too fast, and when I checked my phone again, there were even more posts, more comments, more screenshots spreading between students like wildfire. The walk to school that day felt like walking towards something terrible that I couldn't escape. Every step felt heavy, every breath felt shallow. I kept thinking about that message. Watch your back. By the time I reached the school entrance, my hands were cold and sweaty at the same time. I hesitated for a moment outside the door, staring at the reflection of myself in the glass. I looked exhausted, pale, different, like someone who hadn't slept in days. For a second, I actually considered turning around and going home, pretending to be sick, hiding under my blankets where nobody could stare at me. But then I imagined my parents asking questions, calling the school, making things more complicated. So I forced myself to open the door and walk inside. The moment I stepped into the hallway, the noise hit me like a wave. Laughter, whispering, phones out everywhere. People weren't even trying to hide it anymore. Some students openly pointed their phones at me as I walked past, showing each other the posts. I heard someone say, "That's her." Another voice laughed and said, "She's crazy." My heart was pounding so loudly I thought I might pass out right there in the middle of the hallway. And then something happened that made everything feel even more dangerous than before. Someone shoved my shoulder as they walked past, not hard enough to knock me over, but hard enough to send a message. "You don't belong here." I turned slightly, shocked, but the person kept walking like nothing happened, like I was invisible, or worse, like I was nothing. That was the moment fear truly settled in. Not just embarrassment anymore, not just sadness, real fear. Because it felt like the situation was no longer just about rumors or fake messages. It felt like people were starting to hate me, and hate can turn into something much darker if it goes on long enough. But what terrified me the most was that through all of this, Jake still acted completely normal. Too normal. Through all of this, Jake kept acting like nothing was wrong. That's what made everything feel even more confusing. Everyone else treated me like I was some kind of monster, but he still talked to me sometimes, still joked, still sat in the same spot in class like everything was normal. At first, I thought maybe that meant he believed me. Maybe he knew I wouldn't do something like that, but the more I watched him, the more something felt off. There were little moments that didn't make sense, tiny details that stuck in my mind longer than they should have, like the way he'd glance at his phone and smirk sometimes, or how he always seemed to know about new posts before anyone else mentioned them. One afternoon, during math class, my phone buzzed quietly in my pocket. I ignored it at first because I didn't want to draw attention, but Jake leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "You might want to check that." My stomach dropped instantly. I slowly took out my phone under the desk and opened the notification. Another post, another cruel message from the fake account. My hands started trembling again as I stared at the screen. I hadn't even told anyone my phone buzzed, so how did he know? I turned my head slightly and looked at him. He was pretending to copy something from the board, but there was this tiny smile on his face. Not obvious, just barely there. The kind of smile you could almost miss if you weren't paying attention. That was the first time a terrifying thought crossed my mind. What if he was involved somehow? I tried to push that thought away immediately. It felt impossible. Why would he do that to me? He was the only person who had talked to me when I felt invisible. He was the one who made me feel included at the beginning. It didn't make sense, but once that idea entered my mind, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I started noticing more things, like how he'd sometimes repeat exact phrases that appeared in the fake messages, or how he'd joke about the situation in ways that felt too specific, too personal. One day at lunch, I was sitting alone near the edge of the cafeteria picking at my food without really eating it, when Jake walked over and dropped his tray onto the table across from me. That alone was strange, because he hadn't sat with me in days. He leaned forward slightly and said, "So, still getting hate messages?" His tone sounded casual, almost amused. I nodded slowly, not trusting my voice. He shook his head and laughed softly. "That sucks," he said. But the way he said it didn't sound sympathetic. It sounded entertained, like he was watching a show instead of talking to a real person. I remember staring at him, trying to read his face, trying to understand what was going on behind his eyes. For a split second, I saw something there. Not kindness, not concern, something colder, something distant. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "Honestly, people online are crazy. Could be anyone doing that to you. Anyone." That word echoed in my mind long after he walked away. Could be anyone. But the more I replayed our conversations in my head, the less anyone made sense. Because there was something else I realized. Something that made my stomach twist with fear. Whoever created that fake account knew details about me that most people didn't. Small things, personal things, like the exact way I typed certain words, or inside jokes I had only ever shared with a few people, including him. That realization hit me like a wave of ice, because suddenly, the list of possible suspects got very, very short, and his name moved to the top of it. But I still didn't have proof, just feelings, just suspicions. And accusing someone without proof, especially someone popular like Jake, felt dangerous, like social suicide. So instead of confronting him, I stayed quiet. I watched, I listened, I paid attention to everything he said, everything he did. And slowly, piece by piece, the truth started revealing itself in ways I couldn't ignore anymore. The final confirmation came on a random afternoon, a moment so small that anyone else might have missed it. But I didn't, because that moment changed everything. And it started with a single notification on his phone. It happened during history class on a completely normal afternoon, or at least, it started normal. The teacher was talking about something on the board, explaining dates and events that I barely paid attention to because my mind was already somewhere else. I had gotten used to tuning everything out by that point. School didn't feel like a place to learn anymore. It felt like a place to survive. Jake was sitting one row ahead of me that day instead of next to me, which was unusual but not suspicious at first. I remember staring at the back of his hoodie, feeling that familiar knot in my stomach that showed up every time he was nearby. I still hadn't confronted him about my suspicions. I didn't have the courage, and honestly, I didn't have proof, just feelings. And feelings weren't enough to accuse someone like him, someone popular, someone everyone believed was funny and harmless. Halfway through class, the room was quiet except for the sound of the teacher writing on the board. That's when I heard it, a soft buzzing sound, a phone vibrating. Normally, that wouldn't mean anything. Phones buzz all the time, but this time, it caught my attention because of what happened next. Jake pulled his phone slightly out of his hoodie pocket and tilted it just enough to glance at the screen. He thought nobody could see it, but from where I was sitting, I could, just barely. I wasn't trying to spy at first, it was just instinct. My eyes followed the movement automatically, and for one split second, I saw something that made my heart stop. It was a notification from Instagram, and the username was the fake account, my fake account. I froze instantly. My brain refused to process what I had just seen. I blinked hard, thinking maybe I imagined it. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me because I was already suspicious of him. But then, he smirked. That same tiny smirk I had noticed before. He quickly typed something on his phone, his fingers moving fast like he was used to doing it. And at that exact moment, my own phone buzzed inside my pocket. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling off a cliff. Slowly, with shaking hands, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. I already knew what I was going to see before I even unlocked it. Another notification, another post from the fake account. My vision blurred slightly as I stared at the screen. The timing was too perfect, too exact. There was no way this was a coincidence. My heart started pounding so loudly I thought people around me might hear it. I looked back up at Jake, my hands trembling, my chest tightening with every second. He was still looking down at his phone, typing quickly, completely unaware that I had seen the notification pop up on his screen. And in that moment, everything inside me shifted. All the doubt I had been carrying suddenly turned into something heavier, something colder, realization. The person I trusted, the person who sat next to me, laughed with me, made me feel included at the beginning, was the same person destroying my life behind the scenes. The thought felt unreal, too cruel to be true, but the evidence was right there. I had seen it with my own eyes. My hands started shaking so badly I had to grip the edges of my desk to keep them steady. My breathing became shallow, uneven. I felt like I might pass out right there in the middle of class. Part of me wanted to stand up immediately and scream at him, to demand an explanation, to make him admit it in front of everyone. But another part of me, the scared part, stayed silent, because confronting him without solid proof still felt dangerous. What if he denied everything? What if nobody believed me? What if he twisted the story somehow and made things even worse? So instead, I stayed quiet, but inside, something had changed forever. I wasn't confused anymore. I wasn't guessing anymore. I knew, and that knowledge felt heavier than anything I had ever carried before. The rest of that class felt endless. Every second stretched out painfully slow. I couldn't focus on anything the teacher said. All I could think about was what I had seen and what it meant. When the bell finally rang, students started packing their bags and leaving the room, chatting casually like nothing had happened. Jake stood up too, slipping his phone back into his pocket like it was just another normal day. But for me, nothing was normal anymore, because now I had a secret, a terrifying one. I knew who ruined my life, but the real question was, what was I going to do about it? After that day, something inside me didn't feel the same anymore. It was like a switch had flipped. I wasn't just confused or scared now, I was aware, and that awareness changed everything. I started paying attention in a way I never had before. Not to lessons, not to teachers, but to him, Jake. Every movement, every glance, every time he picked up his phone. I stopped sitting in denial. I stopped telling myself it could be anyone, because deep down, I already knew. But knowing something in your head and proving it in real life are two completely different things. And I needed proof, real proof, something no one could deny, something that would make people finally listen to me. So I started quietly watching everything, not in an obvious way. I couldn't risk that. I still had to act normal, still had to pretend I was just another student trying to survive school, but inside, I was constantly alert. Every time Jake smiled at his phone, I remembered that moment in class. Every time my phone buzzed after he touched his, my stomach twisted. I started noticing patterns. When he was absent, the fake account went quiet. When he was near his phone, posts appeared faster. When he was in a good mood, the posts were more aggressive, more confident, like someone who felt untouchable. It made my skin crawl, but still. I needed something solid, something I could show someone, because I knew what would happen if I went to a teacher or counselor without proof. They would ask questions, they would say things like, "Are you sure?" Or "That's a serious accusation." And if I was wrong, everything would get even worse for me. So I stayed quiet. I waited, I observed, and slowly I started documenting things. I know that sounds extreme, but I didn't feel like I had a choice anymore. I started taking mental notes of every incident, times, places, what he was doing right before posts appeared. I even started screenshotting the fake account's activity, comparing timestamps with when he was online or in school. It became this secret obsession I carried around all day. At school, I still acted normal on the outside. I still sat in class, still pretended to listen, still nodded when teachers spoke. But inside, I was constantly calculating, always watching him from the corner of my eye. And the worst part, he had no idea. He still acted completely relaxed around me sometimes, like nothing had changed, like I didn't know anything. One afternoon, after class, he walked past my desk and stopped for a second. He leaned slightly closer and said, "You've been quiet lately. Everything okay?" And I almost laughed, because the irony was unbelievable. He was the reason I wasn't okay. He was the reason I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat properly, couldn't walk through school without feeling like I was being watched. But I just looked up at him and said, "Yeah, just tired." He nodded like he believed me and walked away. And as I watched him leave the classroom, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let this continue. I wasn't going to stay trapped in this forever. But I also knew something important. If I confronted him too early, I would lose. He would deny it. People would side with him. And I would end up right back where I started, or worse. So I needed timing. I needed control. I needed the moment where there would be no escape for him. That became my focus. Not revenge, not anger, just truth. I told myself that over and over again because it was the only way I could keep going without breaking down completely. And then, the opportunity finally came. A moment where everything aligned perfectly. A moment where I could finally prove it. It happened on a day that started completely normal, but ended in a way I will never forget. That day started like any other. I remember waking up feeling strangely calm, like my brain had gone quiet for the first time in weeks. No overthinking, no panic immediately hitting me the moment I opened my eyes. Just silence. But it wasn't peace. It was focus. I knew something was going to happen that day. I could feel it in a way I can't really explain. Like everything had been building up to a single moment and I was finally standing right in front of it. School felt different the second I walked in. Not because anything had changed outside, but because I had changed. I wasn't walking in as someone who was confused anymore. I was walking in as someone who knew, and that alone made everything feel sharper, clearer, more real. I spent the first few hours watching him like I always did now. Jake acted completely normal, laughing with people, scrolling on his phone, leaning back in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world. But I noticed everything. Every glance at his screen, every quick smile that came right before my phone buzzed, every small detail that confirmed what I already knew but still needed to prove properly. And then it happened. In the middle of third period, I saw him do it again. He checked his phone under the desk, that same subtle movement, that same half smirk, and seconds later, My phone lit up. My heart didn't even jump this time. It just steadied. Because I was ready. I had already saved everything I needed, screenshots, timestamps, patterns, proof that I had been collecting quietly for days. My hands were still shaking slightly, but not from fear anymore. From adrenaline, from knowing the moment was finally here. When the bell rang, I didn't leave the classroom like everyone else. I stayed seated. I waited. I watched him pack his bag like nothing was wrong, like he hadn't destroyed my entire life. And then, right as he walked past my desk, I stood up. "Jake," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it was steady. That made him stop. He turned around slowly, looking slightly annoyed, like I was interrupting something unimportant. "What?" he said. Just that. One word. Casual, detached. I looked at him for a second, and I swear everything around us got quieter, like even the room itself was holding its breath. I pulled out my phone and held it up. "I know it's you," I said. He blinked once, then gave a small laugh. Not nervous, not shocked, just amused. "Know what's me?" he asked. I opened the first screenshot, then another. Messages, timestamps, posts from the fake account, his phone activity patterns. Everything I had spent days collecting. I showed it to him without looking away. The account, the messages, all of it. For the first time, his expression changed slightly. Not fear, not guilt, just calculation. Like he was deciding what to do next. He leaned closer and said quietly, "You're seriously accusing me of this?" I didn't answer right away. I just kept holding the evidence up. "You were always on your phone right before it happened," I said. "Every time." He stared at me for a second, then leaned back and laughed again. But this time it sounded different. A little forced. "That's not proof," he said. "That's just you being paranoid." That word hit harder than I expected. Paranoid, like everything I had gone through was just in my head. Like the isolation, the humiliation, the messages, all of it was just me imagining things. I felt something inside me tighten, but I didn't back down. Not this time. "Then explain the notification I saw on your phone," I said. Silence, just for a second. But it was enough. I saw it. That tiny shift in his expression. The brief hesitation before he spoke again. "You saw nothing," he said quickly. But his voice wasn't as calm anymore. And in that moment, I knew I had him. Not fully, not legally, but enough. Enough that the truth was finally pushing through the cracks he couldn't fully control anymore. People in the room had started listening now. Phones were lowering, conversation stopping, the atmosphere changing. He noticed it too. His confidence flickered for the first time, just for a second. But I saw it, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel powerless. I felt like I finally had the truth standing on my side. And Jake, he was starting to realize there was no easy way out of this anymore. For a few seconds after that, nobody said anything. It was like the entire classroom didn't know whether they were allowed to breathe. I was still standing there, phone in my hand, evidence on the screen, my heart beating so fast it almost felt unreal. Jake looked around the room, and for the first time since all of this started, he didn't look confident anymore. Not fully, not in control. The silence stretched out until one of his friends finally spoke quietly, like he wasn't even sure he should. "Wait, what is she talking about?" That question changed everything, because once it was said out loud, it couldn't be ignored anymore. I turned the screen slightly so others could see. The screenshots, the timestamps, the fake account activity. People started leaning forward. Whispering stopped completely now, and I saw it happening in real time. Doubt, not belief yet, but doubt. Jake let out a short laugh again, but it didn't land the same way it used to. Nobody laughed with him this time. He noticed that. I could see it. "This is ridiculous," he said, but his voice was sharper now, less controlled. I took a step forward. "It's not ridiculous," I said. "It's been my life for months." My voice shook a little at the end, but I didn't stop. I couldn't stop now. I lost my friends because of this. I sat alone every day because of this. I was humiliated in front of everyone because of this. My throat tightened, but I kept going. And you were always there when it happened. That last sentence hung in the air heavier than anything before it. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out immediately. For the first time, he didn't have a quick answer. No joke, no smirk, just silence. Then the teacher finally stepped in, moving between us, asking everyone to calm down, but it was too late for calm. The class was already awake now. People were talking, comparing what they had seen online, checking their phones, scrolling back through posts they had once believed without question. One girl in the back suddenly said, "Wait, I remember this account being weird. I thought it was fake from the start." Another voice followed, "Yeah, the timing was always off." The room started splitting in real time. Some people still doubted me, some looked confused, but a lot of them were starting to see it. Jake stood there for a moment longer, then finally grabbed his bag. "This is insane," he muttered, but he didn't sound angry anymore. He sounded cornered, and then he walked out of the classroom, just like that. No final joke, no control, just gone. The room stayed silent for a few seconds after he left. I slowly lowered my phone, my hands still shaking, but not from fear this time, from everything hitting me at once. Months of being ignored, months of being laughed at, months of thinking I was alone in this. And now, finally, it was out. After class, things didn't magically fix themselves. Some people apologized, some didn't know what to say, some avoided eye contact completely, and I realized something important in that moment. Even when the truth comes out, it doesn't erase everything that happened, it just changes the ending. Later that day, I got called into the office. They said they were going to investigate everything properly. They took the screenshots, they checked the accounts, they looked into everything I had shown, and for the first time, I wasn't the one being questioned like I was guilty. I was the one being listened to. It took time, a lot of time, but eventually the truth fully came out. The fake account was traced back, and everything I had felt, everything I had been through was confirmed. Jake was suspended, and everything after that became a blur of meetings, apologies, and silence where the chaos used to be. But the most important part wasn't what happened to him. It was what happened to me, because slowly, I started breathing again. Not all at once, not perfectly, but step by step. I started sitting with people again. I started talking again. I started existing in spaces without feeling like I didn't belong there. And even though I never forgot what happened, I stopped blaming myself for it. Looking back now, I realized something I wish I'd known back then. People like him don't target you because of who you are. They target you because they think you won't fight back. But I did. Eventually. And if you're listening to this and you're going through something similar, just know this. It doesn't stay like this forever, even when it feels like it will. Even when it feels like everyone believes the lie more than you. Truth has a way of coming out, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, but it comes out. And when it does, you won't always get your old life back, but you will get yourself back, and that is enough. My ex ruined my life, so I ruined his wedding. Okay, that sounds dramatic, but trust me, when I say I did not wake up one morning and decide to go full villain arc, I was actually the kind of girl who color-coded her grocery list and cried when commercials about puppies came on, like I was painfully normal, painfully loyal, and painfully stupid when it came to love, and his name was Marcus. And when I met him, I thought I had just lucked into one of those movie relationships where the guy remembers your coffee order and kisses your forehead and calls you his future wife, like 3 weeks in. And yeah, I know that should have been a red flag, but when someone looks at you like you're the only person in the room, it messes with your brain. And he did that thing where he listened to everything I said, like it mattered. Like when I told him about my dream of opening a little design studio someday, he didn't laugh. He said, "We'll make that happen." We, like it was already decided that our lives were tied together, and I fell for it, completely. Head first, no helmet, and the worst part is everyone loved him too. My mom adored him, my friends trusted him, my boss even said once, "You found a good one." And I felt so proud like I had won some relationship lottery. So when he suggested we move in together after a year, I said yes without hesitation. I packed my stuff into boxes and signed a lease with him and put half my savings into furnishing our apartment because he said we were building our future. And I believed every word, and for a while it was actually perfect, like disgustingly cute couple stuff. Sunday pancakes, movie nights, him leaving sticky notes on the mirror saying, "You got this." And that's why what he did later hit so hard, because it didn't come from a stranger. It came from someone I trusted with everything. And I mean everything. My passwords, my bank details, my fears, my stupid little insecurities I had never told anyone else. And here's the part where things start to crack, because about 2 years in, he started acting weird. Not obvious cheating weird at first, just distant, like always on his phone, but turning the screen away slightly, laughing at messages, but saying just work stuff, coming home late with excuses that sounded rehearsed. And I noticed but I ignored it because I didn't want to be that paranoid girlfriend, and honestly, I was busy too. Working long hours, saving money, still believing in this future we had planned, until one night when I came home early because my client canceled a meeting and I walked into our apartment and heard his voice in the bedroom. Soft, sweet, the way he used to talk to me, and I remember thinking maybe he was on the phone with his mom or something. But then I heard a woman laugh and my stomach dropped so fast it felt like falling down an elevator shaft, and I pushed the door open and there he was, sitting on the edge of our bed with another woman, her hand on his knee like she belonged there, like I didn't exist, and I swear time slowed down in the most cliche way possible, like my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. And he jumped up, started saying my name over and over like that would magically fix it. And the girl looked at me like she was embarrassed but not guilty, which somehow hurt even more. And then came the lies. Oh my God, the lies. He said it wasn't what it looked like. He said she was just a friend. He said I was overreacting, like I was the crazy one for being upset about another woman sitting on our bed touching him, and I wanted to scream, but nothing came out. I just stood there feeling like the floor had disappeared beneath me, and eventually she left, and he tried to hug me, and I pushed him away so hard he hit the wall, and that was the first time I saw real panic in his eyes. And that's when he confessed. Not fully, not honestly, but enough to admit he had been seeing her for a few weeks, which later turned out to be months, and he begged me to forgive him, said it meant nothing, said he loved me, said he was just stressed and stupid and scared of commitment, and here's the thing I hate admitting, I almost forgave him. Because love makes you pathetic sometimes. It makes you cling to the memory of who someone used to be instead of accepting who they are now, but then everything got worse, so much worse, because cheating wasn't even the real disaster. The real disaster came about 3 weeks later when I checked my bank account and realized almost all my savings were gone. Not a few hundred, not 1,000, I mean, nearly everything. The money I had been saving for years, the money I planned to use to start my design studio, gone. And at first, I thought it was a bank error, like some glitch. But then I saw the transfer history, multiple large withdrawals to an account I didn't recognize, and my hands started shaking so badly I could barely hold my phone. And when I confronted Marcus, he went pale, like sheet white pale, and started stuttering, and that's when the truth came out. The real truth, the kind that makes your chest feel hollow. He had access to my banking info because I trusted him, because we shared expenses, and he had been secretly moving money out little by little for months, saying it was for investments, saying he was helping us grow our savings. But it wasn't investments, it was gambling, online betting, risky crypto nonsense, chasing losses, and digging himself deeper. And when he lost everything, he took my money too, trying to win it back. And I remember staring at him thinking, this cannot be real. This cannot be my life. This man I loved didn't just cheat on me, he stole my future. And when I demanded he pay me back, he said he couldn't. He said the money was gone, just gone, like it had never existed. And that was the moment something inside me snapped. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly, like a thread breaking, and I told him to get out. I packed his stuff into trash bags and threw them outside, and I changed the locks that same day, and I cried for weeks after. Ugly crying, the kind where you can't breathe properly and your eyes stay swollen for days. And I had to move back in with my mom because I couldn't afford rent anymore. I had to cancel plans, postpone dreams, start from zero. And while I was rebuilding my life, he disappeared, blocked me everywhere, avoided responsibility like a professional coward. And for a while I thought that was the end, that he had taken everything and walked away without consequences, until about a year later when I got an invitation in the mail, a literal wedding invitation, white envelope, gold lettering, and when I opened it, my hands started trembling again because there it was. His name, Marcus Reynolds, marrying her, the same woman I found in our bedroom, and I swear I laughed out loud because the audacity was unreal. Like this man destroyed my finances, broke my trust, cheated on me, and now he was getting married like nothing happened. Like he was just starting a beautiful new chapter. And I sat there staring at that invitation, thinking about all the nights I cried, all the jobs I took just to rebuild my savings, all the humiliation of moving back home, and something cold and sharp settled in my chest. Not rage exactly, more like clarity, like suddenly I understood that he had never faced consequences. And maybe it wasn't my job to fix that, but it also wasn't my job to protect him from the truth. And that's when the idea started forming, slowly, dangerously, because remember how I said he told me he was making investments? Well, during that time, I had access to emails, statements, transaction histories, screenshots of everything because I used to help organize our finances, and I never deleted those files. Not because I planned revenge, just because I was too hurt to go through them. But now I realized those files weren't just painful memories. They were proof of fraud, stolen money, unpaid debts, and the more I dug through them, the worse it got. Secret loans in my name, accounts he opened using my information, risky bets tied to shady websites, things that didn't just ruin me, they could ruin anyone tied to him, including his new fiancé. And that's when I made a decision. Not to scream, not to show up and throw cake or anything dramatic like that, but to tell the truth in the loudest possible way. So I RSVP'd. Yes, I bought a dress. Simple but elegant, nothing that screamed revenge, and on the outside I looked calm, polite, like just another guest. But inside I was carrying a folder thicker than a novel, filled with documents, bank records, screenshots, everything neatly labeled. Because if I was going to do this, I was going to do it right, and the day of the wedding arrived. Beautiful sunny afternoon, flowers everywhere, people laughing, champagne glasses clinking, and when I saw him standing at the altar smiling like the world had never touched him, I felt that old pain flicker for a second, but it faded fast because I knew what was coming. And when the ceremony started, I stayed quiet, respectful, letting it play out, letting him promise loyalty and honesty while I held proof that he had neither. And then came the reception, music playing, guests chatting, speeches happening one after another, and eventually the DJ announced it was time for open mic speeches, inviting anyone who wanted to share memories with the couple, and that was my moment. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears, but my hands were steady as I walked up to the microphone, and at first people smiled politely, thinking I was just an old friend. And I introduced myself calmly, said I knew Marcus very well, that we had shared years together, and he looked at me then, recognition flashing across his face like lightning, panic spreading fast, and I saw his bride turn toward him confused, and I kept speaking, voice clear, telling the story of how I trusted him, how we built a life together, how he promised forever, and the room got quieter and quieter, forks pausing midair, whispers dying out, and then I held up the folder and said, "Before you promise your life to this man, you deserve to know exactly who he is." And that's when everything exploded, not physically, but emotionally, because I started reading dates, amounts, transactions, explaining how he drained accounts, opened loans under my name, how debt collectors still called me months later, and people gasped, real gasps like in movies. And his bride looked like the ground had dropped beneath her, and Marcus tried to interrupt, tried to grab the mic, but I stepped back and kept talking, handing copies of the documents to his bride, to her parents, to anyone close enough to see, and chaos spread across the room, shouting accusations, his father yelling, her mother crying, guests pulling out phones, recording everything, and finally the bride turned to him and asked one simple question. "Is this true?" And the silence that followed was louder than any scream because he didn't answer right away. He just stood there, sweating, eyes darting, and that hesitation said everything. And when he finally whispered, "I can explain," she slapped him so hard the sound echoed across the hall, and then she walked out, dress swishing behind her, leaving him standing alone at the altar he thought would save him. And the reception collapsed into chaos. Family arguing, guests leaving, whispers spreading like wildfire, and I stood there watching it all unfold, feeling something strange. Not joy exactly, not revenge satisfaction like in movies, more like release. Like I had finally put down a weight I didn't realize I was still carrying. And here's the part that makes the ending truly insane. Because about a week after the wedding disaster, I got a call from a lawyer. And apparently, when the bride's family reviewed the documents I shared, they discovered even more financial fraud linked to Marcus, things that went beyond just me. And they decided to pursue legal action, which led to investigators digging deeper. And long story short, he didn't just lose his wedding, he lost his reputation, his job, and eventually his freedom when charges were filed. And the last time I heard about him, he was sitting in a courtroom looking smaller than I remembered. Nothing like the confident man who once promised me forever. And meanwhile, I rebuilt my savings slowly, painfully, dollar by dollar. And 2 years after that chaotic wedding, I finally opened my own design studio, the dream he nearly destroyed. And sometimes people ask me if I regret what I did, if I feel guilty for ruining his wedding, and I always give the same answer. I didn't ruin his wedding. He ruined his own life the moment he decided lies were easier than honesty. I just made sure the truth showed up on time. Yes, my husband left me because he's gay. Even now, saying that out loud still feels unreal, like I'm talking about someone else's life, not mine. like it's some dramatic movie plot instead of the story that completely shattered my world. If you had asked me 2 years ago where I saw my life going, I would have smiled and told you I was living the dream. Married to the love of my life, planning kids, picking out furniture, arguing about what color to paint the living room like every normal couple. I thought I knew him. I thought I knew us. But I guess sometimes the person you trust the most is still hiding a whole universe inside them. And sometimes love isn't enough to keep something together that was never fully honest to begin with. Let me start from the beginning. I met Daniel when I was 25. It was one of those random moments that people always say will change your life, but you never actually believe it until it happens. I was at a friend's birthday party, not even a big party, just one of those small gatherings in a cramped apartment where everyone is sitting too close together and pretending to like cheap wine. I didn't even want to go that night. I had just gotten off work, I was exhausted, and honestly I felt ugly. You know those days where your hair won't cooperate and your clothes feel wrong and you just want to crawl into bed and disappear. But my friend insisted. She said, I needed to get it out more, meet new people, stop being so serious about life. So I went, and that's where I saw him. He was standing near the kitchen counter laughing at something someone said. I remember noticing his smile first. It was warm, confident, the kind of smile that makes you feel like everything is okay. He looked at me, just for a second, and then he smiled at me, not in a creepy way, not in an arrogant way, just friendly, soft. Later that night, we ended up talking. At first, it was small talk. Where do you work? How do you know the birthday girl? Basic stuff. But then the conversation kept going, and somehow hours passed without me noticing. He asked questions, real questions, not just surface level things. He wanted to know what I cared about, what I dreamed about, what made me laugh. That was the first thing that made me like him. He listened. And when you're used to being overlooked, being listened to feels like magic. We exchanged numbers that night. I told myself not to get excited. I told myself guys always seem interested at first and then disappear. But he texted me the next morning. Good morning. I had fun talking to you last night. Simple message, nothing fancy. But it made me smile like an idiot while I was brushing my teeth. Our first date was at a small coffee shop. Nothing fancy. Just two people sitting across from each other, pretending not to be nervous. He showed up early. That impressed me more than anything else. He stood up when I walked in. Another thing that felt old-fashioned in the best way. We talked for hours again, about childhood memories, about favorite movies, about stupid, embarrassing moments. I remember thinking that it felt easy, too easy, like we had known each other for years instead of days. And he made me laugh, like genuinely laugh, the kind where your stomach hurts and you forget to feel self-conscious. After that, we started seeing each other all the time. Dinner dates, movie nights, walks in the park, late night phone calls that lasted until 2 a.m, even though we both had work the next day. He was thoughtful, always thoughtful. He remembered little things I said, like how I liked vanilla candles, or how I hated olives, or how I always got cold easily. He would show up with small surprises, nothing expensive, just meaningful. One time he brought me soup when I was sick, homemade soup. I still remember how shocked I was that a man actually cooked for me. I told my friends about him, and for the first time in years, I wasn't complaining about dating. I wasn't rolling my eyes or saying all men are the same. I was glowing. Everyone noticed. My mom noticed too. She liked him immediately, said he was polite, respectful, charming. He called her ma'am the first time they met. She still talks about that. After 6 months, we were basically inseparable. After a year, he proposed. It wasn't some huge dramatic proposal. No fireworks, no flash mob, just us, sitting on a bench in the park where we had our third date. He got quiet, and then he pulled out the ring. I remember my hands shaking, my heart racing so hard I thought I might pass out. He said he couldn't imagine his life without me, that I made him feel calm, that I was his safe place, and I believed him. Of course I said yes. I cried. He cried. We hugged in the middle of the park while strangers pretended not to stare. It felt perfect. Looking back now, that word feels dangerous. Perfect. Because nothing perfect ever stays that way. The wedding was beautiful. Not huge, but beautiful. White dress, flowers everywhere, family crying during the vows. When I walked down the aisle and saw him standing there, I felt like the luckiest woman alive. He looked nervous, emotional. He wiped tears from his eyes when he saw me. At the time, I thought those tears meant love. Now I wonder if they meant fear. The first year of marriage felt normal. Happy even. We decorated our apartment together, argued about furniture, burned dinners while laughing about it, watched stupid shows on the couch until we fell asleep. We talked about having kids someday. We talked about buying a house. We talked about growing old together. Everything felt stable, safe, comfortable. But there were little moments, tiny things that didn't seem important at the time, things I brushed off, things I ignored. Because when you love someone, you don't want to look too closely at the cracks. You want to believe everything is fine. And for a long time, I did. Looking back now, the signs were always there. Not obvious, not screaming in my face, just small, quiet moments that didn't make sense at the time. But when you're in love, you become really good at explaining things away. You make excuses for the person you trust the most. You tell yourself you're overthinking, that everything is normal, that marriage just changes people. The first thing I noticed was how little he touched me. Not at the beginning. In the beginning, everything felt normal. He held my hand, hugged me, kissed my forehead when he left for work. But slowly, over time, the physical affection started fading. At first, I thought it was stress. He had gotten a new job around that time, longer hours, more responsibilities. He came home tired, quiet, sometimes distracted. So I didn't push. I told myself he was exhausted. That being supportive meant giving him space. But weeks turned into months, and something felt off. We still kissed, but it felt routine, like something he did because he was supposed to, not because he wanted to. Our intimacy became rare, then it became awkward, then it became almost non-existent. I remember one night very clearly. I had bought new lingerie, something I would normally never wear. I felt nervous, embarrassed, but also excited. I wanted to surprise him. I wanted to bring back whatever spark we had lost. When he came home, I was sitting on the edge of the bed, heart racing. He walked into the room, looked at me, and froze. Not in a good way, not in a wow kind of way, more like confusion. He forced a smile, said, "I look nice." Nice. That word hit me harder than it should have. Nice isn't what you want to hear when you're standing there feeling exposed and vulnerable. He gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. Then he said he had a headache and went to take a shower. I sat there on the bed for 10 minutes after he closed the bathroom door, just sitting, feeling stupid, feeling rejected. But I told myself again that he was tired, that work was stressing him out, that marriages go through phases. That's what everyone says, right? Marriage isn't always passion and fireworks. Sometimes it's routine, sometimes it's quiet, sometimes it's boring. At least that's what I kept telling myself. Then there were the comments. Little comments that felt strange, but not strange enough to question. He started talking more about his coworker, Marcus. At first, it sounded normal. You know how people talk about coworkers all the time, complaining about meetings, joking about office drama? But with Marcus, it was different. He talked about him a lot, like a lot. Marcus said this. Marcus did that. Marcus made this joke. Marcus recommended this restaurant. At first, I even joked about it. I remember saying once laughing, "You talk about Marcus more than you talk about me." He laughed too. But it felt forced, like I had accidentally stepped on something sensitive. Another thing I noticed was how uncomfortable he became when I talked about having kids. Before we got married, we talked about kids all the time. He said he wanted 2, maybe 3 if we could afford it. He talked about teaching them how to ride bikes, helping them with homework, reading bedtime stories. But after about a year of marriage, those conversations changed. Whenever I brought it up, he would go quiet or change the subject or say something vague like maybe later. One night, I asked him directly. I said, "Do you still want kids?" He didn't answer right away. He just stared at the TV like he hadn't heard me. Then he said yes. But it didn't sound like yes. It sounded like obligation. Like he was saying what he thought I wanted to hear. That feeling stayed with me, like a stone in my chest. There were other things too. He became more careful with his phone. At first, he used to leave it lying around on the couch, on the kitchen table, anywhere. But slowly, he started keeping it with him all the time. Even when he went to the bathroom, even when he took a shower. If I walked into the room while he was texting, he would lock the screen quickly. Not in a dramatic way, just subtle, quick. Enough to make me notice, enough to make me wonder. I hated that feeling, that suspicion. Because once suspicion enters your mind, it's hard to get rid of it. And I didn't want to be that wife. The jealous one, the paranoid one, the one who snoops through phones and reads messages. So I ignored it. Again. One evening, everything shifted just a little more. We were invited to a company party, one of those formal office events where everyone dresses too nicely and pretends to enjoy themselves. I didn't want to go, but he insisted. He said it was important that I come, that people wanted to meet me, so I got dressed. Simple black dress, nothing fancy. When we arrived, I noticed something immediately. He looked nervous, more nervous than usual. Sweaty palms, tight smile, and then I saw why. Marcus was there, standing across the room, tall, confident, laughing with a group of people. And when Marcus saw Daniel, his face lit up. Not in a casual way, in a way that made my stomach twist. They hugged, not a quick handshake or pat on the back, a full hug. Longer than normal, long enough for me to notice, long enough for me to feel something I couldn't explain. That night, I watched them. Not intentionally at first, but I couldn't help it. Every time Marcus walked into the room, Daniel's attention shifted. Every time Marcus laughed, Daniel smiled. At one point, I saw Marcus touch Daniel's arm while talking, just a casual touch. But Daniel froze for a second, like electricity had passed through him. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was being ridiculous, that men hug their friends all the time, that coworkers become close, that none of this meant anything. But deep down, something felt wrong, like a puzzle piece didn't fit. And the worst part was that I didn't have proof, just feelings, just moments, just tiny details stacking on top of each other, until the weight of them became impossible to ignore. Then came the night everything almost broke. We were sitting on the couch, watching TV, not really talking, just existing next to each other. And suddenly, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I turned to him, and I asked the question I had been avoiding for months. "Are you cheating on me?" He looked shocked. Actually shocked, like the question had punched him in the chest. He said no immediately, too quickly, too defensively, and then he got angry, not furious, but hurt, offended. He said, "How could you even think that?" He said he loved me. He said he would never betray me like that, and I believed him, at least partially, because something in his eyes that night wasn't guilt, it was fear, pure fear. And I didn't understand why. Not yet. But soon, I would. And when the truth finally came out, it didn't come with shouting. It didn't come with fighting. It came with tears and words that changed my life forever. After that night, things between us became quieter. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet, the kind where every silence feels like it's hiding something. We stopped arguing, but not because everything was fine. More like we were both too tired to pretend anymore. I started watching him differently, not like a wife, like a stranger trying to solve a mystery. Every little movement felt suspicious. Every moment of distance felt louder than before. And then one night, everything finally broke. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about it, no big event, no dramatic setup, just an ordinary evening that turned into the moment that changed my entire life. He came home later than usual. I was already sitting at the kitchen table pretending to scroll on my phone, but honestly, I had been staring at the same screen for 20 minutes without reading anything. When he walked in, I noticed something immediately. His eyes were red, not tired red, crying red. My stomach dropped before he even said a word. He didn't say hello. He didn't kiss me. He just stood there for a second, holding his keys like he didn't know what to do with his own hands. Then he sat down across from me, and that's when I saw it. His hands were shaking. I remember thinking, this is it. Something bad is about to happen. Something life-changing. I asked him what was wrong. He didn't answer right away. He just looked at the table. Then he took a deep breath. Another one. And then he said my name. Not in his usual voice. In a broken voice. The kind of voice that sounds like it's carrying years of pain. He said he needed to tell me something. Something he should have told me a long time ago. My heart started racing so fast I could hear it in my ears. I thought he was about to tell me he cheated. I thought he was about to tell me he had another woman. That would have hurt, but at least it would have made sense. Instead, he said something I never expected. He said, "I think I'm gay." Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet, almost like a confession whispered into the dark. For a second, I didn't react. Not because I wasn't shocked, but because my brain literally couldn't process the words. It felt like hearing a sentence in a language you don't understand. You hear the sound, but it doesn't become meaning. So I asked him to repeat it. I said, "What did you just say?" And he said it again, clearer this time. "I'm gay." The room felt like it started spinning, not physically, emotionally, like everything I thought was real suddenly lost its shape. I stared at him, waiting for him to laugh, waiting for him to say he was joking, waiting for him to correct himself, but he didn't. Instead, tears started running down his face. Real tears, uncontrolled, the kind that come from somewhere deep inside. I had never seen him cry like that before, not even at our wedding, not even when his grandfather died. This was different. This was collapse. I asked him how long he had known. He covered his face with his hands. And when he finally answered, his voice sounded completely broken. He said he had known for years, before he met me, before we got married. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Before he met me, before we got married. I felt anger rise in my chest so fast it scared me. Not quiet anger, explosive anger. I stood up so quickly my chair fell backwards. I asked him why. Why would you marry me if you knew? Why would you build a life with me if you knew? Why would you promise forever if you knew? He kept crying. He kept apologizing over and over. He said he thought he could change. He said he thought loving me would fix him. He said he wanted to be normal. That word made me freeze. Normal. Like who he was wasn't normal. Like our entire marriage was built on fear instead of truth. He told me he had tried to ignore his feelings for years, that he dated women because it felt safer, because his family expected it, because society expected it, because being honest felt terrifying. And then he met me. He said I was kind, patient, safe. He said he really did love me. And that part hurt in a completely different way, because I believed him. I still believe him. I think he loved me in the only way he knew how, but love built on denial is fragile. Eventually, reality cracks through it. I asked him about Marcus. That name felt heavy in my mouth. He didn't deny it. He didn't even hesitate. He said Marcus was the first person who made him feel understood, the first man he ever allowed himself to feel something for. He said nothing physical had happened while we were married, but the feelings were there. Growing, becoming impossible to ignore, and suddenly every moment from the past years started replaying in my mind. The distance, the lack of intimacy, the forced smiles, the long hugs, the careful phone habits, the awkward reactions, the headaches, the avoidance. All the puzzle pieces finally made sense, and honestly, that was the worst part. Not the betrayal, not the truth. The realization that deep down I had known something was wrong all along. I just didn't know what. I started crying. Not quiet crying, ugly crying, the kind that shakes your whole body. Because in that moment, I wasn't just losing a husband, I was losing the future I had imagined. The children we planned, the house we talked about, the growing old together, all of it disappeared in one single conversation. He told me he couldn't keep pretending, that it wasn't fair to me, that I deserved someone who could love me completely, not halfway, not secretly fighting himself, completely. And somehow, hearing that made me feel both angry and heartbroken at the same time. Because he was right, but it still destroyed me. That night lasted for hours. Crying, talking, silence, more crying. Eventually, he told me he wanted to separate. Not because he hated me, not because I wasn't enough, but because he couldn't live a lie anymore, and neither could I. The next morning, he packed a bag. Just one bag, clothes, toothbrush, a few personal things. Nothing dramatic, no shouting, no throwing things, just quiet devastation. He stood at the door for a long time before leaving, like he wanted to say something else, like he wanted to rewind time, like he wanted to undo the damage. But some things can't be undone. He told me he was sorry, that he never meant to hurt me, that I deserved happiness. And then he walked out, just like that. Years of marriage reduced to the sound of a door closing. The silence after he left was unbearable. The apartment felt empty in a way I had never experienced before. Not just physically empty, emotionally hollow. Like someone had taken the center of my life and removed it completely. The weeks after that were the hardest of my life. Explaining to family, explaining to friends, answering questions I didn't even understand myself. Some people blamed him, some people pitied me, some people didn't know what to say at all. And honestly, neither did I. Because the truth is, I wasn't just angry, I was grieving. Grieving a marriage, grieving a future, grieving a version of my life that no longer existed. But over time, something changed. Not quickly, not magically, slowly, painfully. I started to understand something important. He didn't leave because I wasn't enough. He left because he finally told the truth. And even though that truth destroyed my world, it also set both of us free from a life built on pretending. Do I still feel hurt sometimes? Yes. Do I still feel betrayed? Yes. But I also see the signs now. All those little moments I ignored, all those feelings I pushed aside. And if there's one thing I learned from all of this, it's this. When something feels wrong, don't silence your instincts. Don't ignore the quiet voice inside your head, because sometimes the truth is already there, waiting for you to notice it. And sometimes the person you think you're losing was never fully yours to begin with.